This is my first time.
You're new here, aren't you?
First time.
Welcome to Babylon 5 for the first time, not a Star Trek podcast. My name is Jeff Akin, and I'm watching Babylon 5 for the first time.
And I'm Brent Allen, and I'm also watching Babylon 5 for the very first time. We are two veteran Star Trek podcasters watching Babylon 5 for the first time. We're searching for Star Trek-like messages within the series episode by episode, and we're also just trying to decide how much we really like the series watching it for the first time 30 years too late.
And while this is a Babylon 5 podcast, not a Star Trek podcast, like Brent said, we are Star Trek podcasters. So there's a good chance those references are going to come in, especially, I think, maybe in this episode. But to keep us on point, we have the rule of 3. Each of us get 3 references, up to 3, no more, per episode. Once we go over, we got to cut that out. Like, I'll literally cut it out of the episode.
Do you really?
I've never done that. I've threatened it a whole lot. I've never actually, and you've gone over, I think, once.
I think like once or twice, I was like, I don't care. I'm just going to keep going. I'm going to blow the whole thing.
But, I hit a lot of buttons when it happened. I'm like, no, there's noise, more noise. Well, hey, I want to share, we have a lot of ways that you can interact with us and get in touch with us, right? If you're watching us on YouTube, we have a super active community on there that you can be a part of. We're on Twitter at Babylon First. We have a website, babylon5first.com. That's the number 5 and the word first.com. And you can contact us through that as well. And that's where the first thing I want to share with you, Brent, and everyone else is a really cool email that's timely based on a topic that we talked about here last week.
Oh.
Spoilers.
Okay.
It's not spoilers. It's about spoilers. So I think this will be good. This is from Trent. He went to our website, babylon5first.com. Actually, no, I'm lying to you. He actually sent us an email to our email address, babylon5first@gmail.com. You can do the same. But he says, or he asks, do you guys consider behind-the-scenes production notes spoilers? I can send you some of the current episode or backwards-looking notes from Lurker's Guide if you want. Otherwise, I'll keep you guys as pure as possible. I don't want to ruin your virgin takes on the show. It is so enjoyable to re-experience one of my favorite shows through your unspoiled eyes. What do you think about that one?
While I think that in general, no, it would not be a spoiler, especially if it doesn't refer. I think the two things: refer to events that happen in the future, or refer to knowledge that we don't necessarily have yet. You know what I mean? Like, I think those are the two litmus tests.
I want it to be just I'm dude sitting in, what was it on, P10 or whatever back in the day. Like, I just want to be dude watching it on there without the annoying commercials.
Yeah, again, like I say, if it mentions, events that happen in the future or knowledge that we don't yet have, which the thing about that, for those of you out there who have watched this show before, it can be really hard to remember what you don't know at this point of the story yet. And so that's where that can draw a line. So I would generally say no thanks. But I appreciate the offer. And please, if Jeff and I wind up doing a rewatch of this, like hey, let's go through it again for a second time, Babylon 5 for the second time, right? If we do that, then I want all the behind the scenes information.
Totally.
All of it. I buy DVDs, not for the movie, but for the special features that you can't get from a digital download. Like I love the special features. I love all the background stuff.
On YouTube, Michael Hirema had a really cool thing that he talked about. We've been talking since, I think, like the first or second episode of this show about apparently you can just beat people up on Babylon 5.
Right,
it's fine. He says, with all the fighting and lack of charges, I kind of see Babylon 5 like a frontier town, especially with all the different races and very different customs hanging out in a limited space and a lack of manners among those not in green sector. What looks like a vicious assault to us might just be a spirited culinary debate among a couple of Pakmara. As long as no lasting damage is done, I can see security letting a lot slide, with the understanding that if they do have to get involved, they'll finish it quickly and no one will be happy.
I could agree with that if it's not a town of 250,000 people.
Yeah.
If you're a town of like 200 people, I get it. 250,000, you got to have a little more, shall we say, law and order. Here's my question out of that whole email, though. Jeff, do we know what green sector is?
Yeah. Green.
What is green sector?
That's like the cool, I think that's the ambassador ring, right?
Oh, is it? Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think that's the high class spot.
Because I know there's the brown sector, which by the way would be hilarious if that was like the sewer line, be the brown sector.
If Babylon 5 were written by 12-year-old boys. Right?
No, Jeff, I am not joking. Walt Disney World. In Walt Disney World, there is a land called Liberty Square. I don't know if you're familiar with it. All of the concrete throughout Walt Disney World is red for some stupid reason. Except for in Liberty Square, there is a cobblestone path running through the red concrete. Do you know why?
Why?
Because that is the symbolic of the river of poop that people back in the colonial days would just throw their bedpans out of the window into the street. And it would just be, that's what that is. Like legitimately what that is. So take back your 12-year-old boy comment because.
Well, I feel like, people tend to get pretty riled up about, when we take some statues down and stuff, people get riled up about, losing our history and glossing over it. Mm-hmm. I think there are parts of it that it might be okay to gloss over, and rivers of human feces might be one of those things we can just gloss right over.
We like to play our game like the rule of three. Well, here, I've got another game just for you and me. It's another game we like to play where when we get to the end of the episode, we like to guess what next week's title is. This is actually the spot where we revisit what we did last week into this week. And so, Jeff, last week we made a guess, a blind guess. I swear to heaven almighty, Jeff, we do not watch the episodes ahead. We do not read show descriptions. We do nothing but see the title of next week's episode. And I don't even look at that title until you mention it at the end of the episode. I swear, hand on whatever holy book or not holy book you would like for me to put that hand on. That's how the game is played, and we make a prediction based on that alone. Jeff, let's revisit it and see how accurate we were. What did you say last week you thought A Race Through the Dark Places was going to be?
So there's what I thought, right? It's some Kefir thing, actually racing through hyperspace and looking at things. But Brent, for someone who has never looked ahead at this or watched this before, you hit some pretty obscure and very specific plot points very exactly in a way that this is 2 weeks in a row now, right? Soulmates was pretty close beat to beat. And this one, I think it's time we have this conversation because this is a well-written show, right? But I mean, wow.
Just let's get technical about this because if I recall, what I actually said was this episode could not be about Bester, could it? It couldn't be about Bester. And so I say no, I did not call Bester being in this episode. In fact, what I did say is I said this episode would be about Franklin. It would center on Franklin dealing with some sort of an ethical problem. And while this certainly had an element of Franklin in it, it was a really minor part of the whole episode. It didn't center on him. And frankly, if you took him out of it, the episode wouldn't have changed at all. And I'm not really sure that it was an ethical thing because he was just doing the right thing.
Doing the right thing that was against the law, clearly, to the
Fair
point
enough.
that Garibaldi was even, it was about, and your whole thing was, it's going to be a Psi Corps thing. I'm like, there's no way it can be a Psi, they just had a Psi Corps episode, right? And then there's no, I want Bester. It's got to have Bester. There's no way it could have Bester. And I'm like, there's no way. Yeah, you're right. There is no, but here we are.
Listen, maybe what it is actually JMS was seeding these previous episodes to get you already, like he's doing that Inception thing where he's planting the thoughts in your mind where it's like, it's about time we go have a visit from that dude Bester and we find out what's going on with Talia's little gift that she got from, now we've been talking about that for weeks. Is they dropped that story and we haven't heard about it. We got to come back to it. We've been saying that for weeks now.
So literally what you're saying is you are the target audience for JMS, and everything he wrote was literally for you to go, I can do this math. Like I'm totally Russell Crowe, beautiful minding this whole thing.
I will 100% own everything you just said. I am the target audience for this show. Yes.
Well, I don't know how to test this. But if we can ever test your Psi rating, your P rating, I think we're going to, I think we
It
need
might
to,
be that.
right? Because I'm very clear with mine. It's gone from a -2 to a -4. I'm
You're
the
going
opposite of
backwards
a
the other way.
telepath. Yeah. I mean, seriously. I mean, is Kefir even in this show anymore?
Yeah.
Well, no,
I
but
got it. Jeff, I know I texted you this earlier, but I'll share it here anyway. I seriously thought about actually looking ahead at the next episode so that I could purposely guess wrong, because you're right. It is becoming a little ridiculous. And it's like, what in the world? I'm not trying. I promise I'm not looking ahead.
And honestly, like if you're listening to this and not watching us, I'd see Brent every week when I tell him, hey, here's the name of the thing. He's like, oh, shoot, what is the what? That had more than 3 words in it. What was it?
Because you also take out the very long pause where I'm thinking it through.
Yeah.
The people listening are like, oh, he's just coming up that off the top of his head. No. I'm giving it some time and thinking about it.
Yeah, people watched Brent for like 2 minutes and 14 seconds, be like, I don't know. Can you repeat that? What? Write it in the thing.
So you said, well, what was it? Was it last week? It wasn't this. It was last week's. Like I literally talked myself into the plot line.
Yeah,
like I started
soulmates.
at one spot and I continued to talk until I got into the like, oh, you know what would be cool? Oh, and then you know what would be cool? And then like, what if like, and then this, okay, so here's the new idea that has nothing to do with what I originally said.
All right, well, we'll see. But for those of us who, or for those of you who haven't watched this before for a long time and you're wondering what in the heck we're even talking about with Bester, what and who's this, whatever, Brent, can you remind all of us what this episode, A Race Through Dark Places, was all about?
Buckle in, folks, because here we go. It was a normal day on Babylon 5. That is until a ship arrived carrying the bad guy. But since that doesn't actually happen until 8.5 minutes into the episode, let's rewind and talk about what we missed. Sheridan is blowing a gasket at the audacity of Earth Force to require him and Ivanova to either move to smaller quarters or start paying rent. It has nothing to do with the fact that they want 30 credits a week for a measly 7 square feet. It's the principle of the matter, Jeff. The principle of the matter. Sheridan even tells Dr. Franklin that he's going to stick to his guns, but Franklin clearly doesn't think that that's going to get him anywhere. And Franklin says, hey, don't worry about it, Jeff. I'll always have a cop for you in my quarters, because when you're a doctor, you can medically requisition one, just in case a newly widowed alien lady just happens to faint right outside your door, and you can bring her in and attend to her needs. Speaking of attending to her needs, Delenn has a need. She has a need to learn more about humans. And so she asks Sheridan out on a date, like a date. Meanwhile, back on Earth, or at least I think it was Earth. It actually might have been Mars now that I think about it. Our old friend, who couldn't possibly be in this episode at all, Bester, has been searching for details about a telepathic underground railroad that is smuggling unregistered telepaths to the outer planets to keep them away from Psi Corps. They're even going so far as to scan a guy so deeply that it kills him, but not before Bester catches the location of the Underground Railroad's clearinghouse, Babylon 5. Everyone all caught up? Okay, good. Now, it was a normal day on Babylon 5 until a ship arrived carrying a very prominent member of Psi Corps, demanding very nicely to have an immediate face-to-face with Station Command. Yep, you guessed it. Our old buddy Bester is back on Babylon 5. He tells the whole command crew, including Talia, about the Underground Railroad. No one is particularly sad to learn that this is being operated through Babylon 5. It's just they're kind of at odds with it because technically it's illegal. Ivanova clues Sheridan in that Bester guy is not to be trusted. He all he needs to do is just go watch that season 1 episode Mind War or check the files, whatever. While the command staff are all talking about this, Talia and Bester are getting a nice little walk and talk, which is important because that later leads us to Talia being alone in her quarters watching sort of a clip show of Mind War with all that stuff that happened with Jason Ironheart, including the fact that he gave her a gift, a super psi power, which totally launches a penny, because they have pennies in the future, into the wall of her quarters. Good news, folks. It wasn't an exterior wall, no explosions. But Talia also realizes in that moment that Jason gave her another gift. She also has the ability to shield her mind from Bester because he was with her a few times and didn't even pick up on the new powers at all. Well, while all that's happening with Talia, Delenn and Sheridan, they're out on that date and it's going well, like really well, like really, really well. So well, in fact, that later that night when Sheridan is falling asleep with Ivanova, he starts cracking stupid dad jokes at her. Now, P.S. Sheridan and Ivanova aren't a thing. They just both got locked out of their quarters because they didn't pay rent, and now they're sleeping in his office. But the whole Sheridan and Delenn thing, yeah, we're going to have to keep an eye on that one. All right, back to the bad guy. Bester and Talia are having breakfast the next morning. They're not on a date when they're suddenly attacked by some lurkers. Bester stands his ground and he shoots back because they're shooting at him. What he doesn't notice is that Talia is actually kidnapped by the lurkers while Bester is shooting back because they're shooting at him. And back with the command staff, Bester is relaying just how awesome he was because he survived an attack where they were shooting at him. Talia? Yeah, he's sure she's safe. They weren't really shooting at her because they're shooting at him. Did he mention that they were shooting at him? Well, Talia awakens down below, right smack dab in the middle of Underground Railroad HQ. At first, she's like, hey, listen, you guys really ought to go back to Psi Corps because they're super cool and they surely wouldn't hurt you. That is until they all start telling her their stories. Some include the murder of a brother. Some include arranged marriages that Talia herself experienced. Some even included forced pregnancies. Talia is beginning to come around, and they say that they have a plan for how to beat Bester. Now, Sheridan has arranged a meeting through Dr. Franklin with the leader of the Underground Railroad. When Sheridan arrives at the Underground, he learns that Dr. Franklin is the leader of the Underground Railroad because, of course, he is. He's actually a part of a group of doctors that identify people with latent telepathic ability and try to get them safely out before Psi Corps can find out about them. Sheridan's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place with this. He could turn Franklin in and the others, but that wouldn't be right, and it would mess up Babylon 5 pretty good. Or he could just let Bester come down because he's on his way and discover everyone for himself, in which case more bad things would happen, like they're all going to die. But Talia has a third option in mind. When Bester arrives, he is confronted by the entire group of telepaths who, without their gloves on, let their powers combine. And they all think pain at the exact same time, and Bester begins to buckle, but he doesn't break because after a few seconds, Talia turns on the telepaths and she and Bester take everyone out with a pew, 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 pew. Literally, pew, 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 leaving those two as the only ones left standing. And Bester's like, hey, this is pretty cool. Look, no witnesses. Now let's get out of here. After he's gone, Sheridan and Franklin emerge, and they look over at Talia and the very much alive telepaths, all still holding hands, still doing their psychic thing. You see, they planted that sequence of events in Bester's mind so that he would leave not knowing anything any different. This wouldn't have been possible without Talia's super souped up powers, but that's still not enough to save the Underground Railroad operation at B5. That's okay, though. There are others out there, and they will take the place of this one. Babylon 5 is just too hot now. Still believing the whole ruse, Bester asks Talia to keep an eye out on Sheridan. He pauses just before leaving. Does he know about her powers? Did he pick up on it? Well, we don't really know because he just turns around and walks away anyway. This whole situation has been really heavy. And Talia, she needs a drink. So she turns to the one person on the station that she can turn to, Ivanova, who's now back in her quarters after Sheridan diverts some of that military money to pay the rent. But if Ivanova is going to have to talk with her, Talia is going to have to remove that Psi Corps badge, which she does. And I really, really hope that badge isn't some sort of communicator. The end.
That's a good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot to get in there.
There's a lot of this episode. A lot of things. I tried my best to condense.
Stand by. We'll be right back. Are you ready to take your Babylon 5 for the first time experience to the next level? With our exclusive Patreon, you'll get access to all kinds of cool stuff that you can only find there. Our recording notes, unedited reaction videos, an exclusive Discord community. And you can even be listed as a producer of the show. Plus, we even offer exclusive meet and greets and hangouts. You won't find this kind of experience anywhere else. Get all these amazing benefits, plus the opportunity to interact with other fans from around the world. It's being part of a huge community where everyone shares the same appreciation for Babylon 5. Subscribe at patreon.com/Babylon5First. That's the number 5 and the word first to get access to these incredible benefits. That's patreon.com/Babylon5First. We can't wait to see you there. This is one of those ones on like a second viewing, like I was picking up stuff I didn't pick up on the first one. I'm sure on a third there'll be more. But I think, and this is ridiculous. I've just been, ever since we started recording, I've had to figure out a way to work this in. And I might even cut this out, but I've got to say it. Bester paused at the end, looked back, for a second, kind of started and turned. That's actually where the title of the episode came from, A Race Through Dark Places, because he's not getting on a shuttlecraft back to Mars. He's getting on a shuttlecraft to go for his colonoscopy. All right. Yeah.
What?
A race through dark places.
Oh, Jeff.
Well, hey, that's the show. We're done.
My apologies. I needed a moment. It's too dark. Yes, I am 12 years old and poop jokes still work with me.
I never said it wasn't funny, the whole poop river thing. Right? Okay.
It makes me laugh every time I go through Disney World. I just look at it and just giggle.
Okay. I literally yelled out loud in my office alone twice, 2 times during this episode. Like it wasn't like one of those like, laughs or whatever that we've had a couple of times. Like I literally like, what? 2 whole times in this one. It was so good. It was fun. It was heavy. It was dark. And like, I feel like in the Earth, Mars, Psi Corps thing, I don't know that the pieces are really coming together, but like, I feel like I kind of know what the pieces are now, if that makes any sense.
Yep.
Yeah. Because like they almost busted out for us the corkboard and the red yarn tying everything together, right? Santiago getting killed, Ironheart, Lurker Dude, who was also with Ironheart, who came on the Psi Corps breeding program, all that kind of stuff. I also loved, as a bureaucrat, as a government worker, I loved the budgetary politics that they had in this one. But seriously, Bester was back, and he was bester than ever.
Yes, he was. So here's the thing. I am aware that people keep talking about Bester. People love Bester. As soon as he popped up and, it's Walter Koenig. You've got him on the show. Oh, he's like, he says it's his favorite role he's ever done, even more than Chekhov and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, so at that point, like in the back of my head, again, folks, you're giving me information. It's behind the scenes, but it clues me into he's going to be back. I don't know how more often he's going to act like here's an example. Do you know how many times Q was in Star Trek, Jeff?
It was like 7 or something like that, wasn't it?
He was in 7 times for Next Generation, and then he was in like a total of 11, like 4 more times with the other shows. 11 episodes. That's it. Not counting the new stuff that's in. And think of how major Q is in the Star Trek universe. Bester could wind up being in like 6 episodes total of Babylon 5 and be felt as this like huge major presence.
But yeah, exactly. But what I loved about him in this one, he wasn't really wrong. Like he was just following the law. There's a law that says telepaths have to do this. This is going on. I got to do something about it.
Well, I would, yes, technically you are correct.
Well, he relished in it. That's the thing, right?
It's a law that shouldn't exist. And it's a law that is morally reprehensible. And there's so much to talk about with that.
There is so much
that they really explored in this episode. But I wholly agree with you. Like, it feels like Walter Koenig is really figuring out Bester.
Yeah.
In this episode. Like, I don't think he did anything that contradicts what we saw with him last time. But last time he felt very wooden and very, bad guy-ish.
He was a villain. He was clearly a villain.
Right. This time he was much more, I don't want to say smooth. No, you know what it is? You know who the best villains are the one who like you kind of understand where they're coming from. And he had more of that, I think, in this episode than he did before. Like there's a legit piece to, we have to get the telepaths out to protect everyone else because they're a security risk. Like that's a legit thing that you have to be concerned about. Are they really a security risk? I don't know. We can talk about that later. But
and I think there's a lot of questions around it. But I think if you take out that first scene of him on Mars, like literally crushing the dude's brain like a grape, and just that sociopathic piece of she's like, oh my God, he's dead. He's like, doesn't matter. Who cares? I caught it. I got the information. This guy's life means nothing. You take that scene away and just have him show up on Babylon 5, even with the history in Mind War, and he comes in and you just get that senior staff briefing that starts it off. Yeah, that's a totally reasonable request. He's coming in. He's talking to the right people. He's not running some rogue operation. He's asking to work with them. He's just doing his job at that point. And I think that adds so much to, and I loved the play between him and Garibaldi, because Garibaldi got that. He understood it. He's like, this sucks. I hate you. I hate this law, but also like it's my job to uphold the law. So I guess we'll do this thing. The
only times Bester felt bad was the beginning scene that you just discussed. And then at the end where he's like, yep, no witnesses. Let's get out of here before they get down here. And I don't want to answer any questions. Yeah. Like even when he was shooting people, he was getting attacked.
Exactly. He was defending himself.
Now he could be full of himself and be like, oh, look, everybody, oh, forget about her. They weren't after her. They were after me. And I took care of it. Like that's just him being full of himself. Mm-hmm. That's not bad, but you're right. Like he had that kind of thing. Jeff, I have to ask you, because I know this is on my mind and this is on the mind of all of our listeners out there and all of our viewers on YouTube. You said you yelled twice. Are you going to tell us at what points you yelled, or do I need to drag it out of you?
Yeah, I was gonna let him come up in conversation, because whatever. So the one that I think everyone is probably in their mind is thinking, but it was in that moment when all the telepaths were holding hands, and Lurker Dude is like, someone's working against us. And you have that moment of like, I wonder who it is. And he turns and he's like, it's you. And then Talia is like, go. And she whips out a PPG. I literally, and I'm putting my finger on the sensor, I literally screamed, holy sh! I couldn't believe it. I could not. And I was, the whole time, I'm just like, oh my God. And then the cut to like, nope, that's all a thing. I'm just like, that was brilliant. That was such good television.
So such good writing at that moment.
Yeah. And the cutting, the editing, and because what it did is you don't expect that from Talia, right? So it immediately rocks you and you're in this weird spot, and then it comes out and they're still there. Sheridan's standing there and everything's fine. And like mentally, you're still like, what is happening? You got this dissonance in your mind. And then they're like, well, we did this whole thing. And the timing of it, like your brain kind of settles just at the right moment to accept the story. And they even slow played it. Had Sheridan basically restate everything that just happened, right. And then they're like, yeah, because we did this thing. And you're like, oh yeah.
It was very Ocean's 11.
Yeah. Right.
In that moment, right?
We did this and here's how this happened and the whole piece. But the other time I yelled and freaked out was during the date with Delenn and Sheridan. And when Sheridan leaned back and he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh, they're gonna, because last week, right, we were talking about the cramps and the reproductive system. We're like, I wonder who she wants her some Sheridan. And I think Sheridan wants, I think this is going to happen.
Is this going to become a thing?
I think it is.
Is this a thing?
It was so teased out. And like that moment when he leaned back and like they rested on him leaning back for like time. Like you felt him basking in that moment.
Yeah, because this certainly, like she shows up in the dress and he's like you could almost see the cartoon eyes like shooting out of his face, like ooga ooga,
Totally, yeah.
And they're laughing and they're giggling and she's touching his arm and
everything.
I'm like,
everything. There was palpable tension there, and he just fell right. And even that whole scene when he and Ivanova are in his office, and he's just like he's basking in it. It's we've all experienced that first date with someone, and you're like, this is gonna be magic. I love her or him, and it's gonna be the best thing ever. He's in that moment, like leaning back, and Ivanova's literally like, I would stab you right now if I didn't work with you. I just want to go to sleep. Please shut up.
So I got it. I'm going to save this for later when we get into the discussion about deltas and stuff. But I thought this was the perfect B plot to the A plot that was going on.
Yeah.
The two, Delenn and Sheridan on this date, and Bester and people looking for this Underground Railroad, those two juxtaposed against each other and the messages of what's happening between the two. I can't wait till we get to that part to talk about it. Don't let me get out of here without mentioning it. I don't think I'm going to be able to, but we've got to talk about that because this is one of those episodes where, like, if you really look at it, and this is where we apply that analytical lens that we get, those two things really like dovetail into each other and couple up. And I can't wait to.
Yeah. Like TKO, you know, people still malign TKO, but those two plots were perfect for each other.
Exactly.
Since we're in the office right now with Sheridan and Ivanova, can we talk about those jokes?
Oh, those marvelous pieces of, oh my gosh. Yes, please.
So, I mean, obviously there was the hilarious one about how many Minbari does it take to screw in a light bulb? None. They always surrender right before they finish the job, and they never tell you why.
I really hope that this was not a joke that she told him.
I almost hope it was.
Like, where did this joke come from? Like, because he just bagged on this girl that he just went on a date with, effectively.
But my favorite, though, was the knock knock joke. It was but not because of the gazoon. This is how I would like to tell that joke. Okay, so we're gonna play it here.
Okay.
Knock knock.
Who's there?
Kosh.
Kosh who?
Exactly. Where the hell is this guy? I haven't seen him once in the second season.
I don't think he's been in the second season, has he?
I mean, they haven't even like had his. There were extras in the background that were all narned up and looking stuff. Not a single Vorlon, no Kosh, no nothing. Not even standing around. Who is this guy? Is he even in the credits anymore? I don't know. I skipped.
Is it so expensive to put this guy in the episode that they just keep not writing him in?
I mean, they could just put his costume there and just have him like, oh, there he's in the background. There you go. Just don't
have the camera pan by as he's back there. Yeah.
Don't keep on him too long. I really did enjoy that making them rent their room storyline. I thought it was great.
I thought it was absolutely ridiculous.
What?
And not the storyline, what they actually were saying. They're going to make them. Okay. I don't know how much a credit is in today's money. Let's assume it's a 1-for-1, 1 credit for $1. Let's just assume.
Yeah.
30 credits a week, $30 a week. And I'm going to take Ivanova's word for it. For 7 square feet, $120 a month for 7 square feet. You're going to quibble over that? Jeff, my desk and my chair take up more than 7 square feet of where I'm sitting right now. I couldn't believe it. I'm Team Sheridan on this one. Don't pay it.
So I think it's because I work for the government that I get it. Like I see this kind of stuff happen all the time. Hey, you have to live here. Like there's you can't go live off base, right? This is but hey, we're gonna find a way to charge you for it. That's what we're gonna do. I thought so. My 2 thoughts. One, I'll touch on both of them really quick. But I was disappointed. I appreciated Sheridan fighting the fight because the principle of like he was right to fight this fight. But also, as a leader, leaders eat last. I will happily take the smallest room in here if it allows us to do this, that, and the other. Now that's the point that was never made, right? So you're saving this money by charging us $30 a week? Seriously, that's going to make or break the bank? I loved his problem solving though, where he's like, yeah, I just diverted funds from our combat readiness fund to pay for it. But he diverted it's $60 or whatever, you know, for the two of them from combat readiness. A week, yeah. So you diverted that from combat readiness. About a year ago, Commander Jeffrey Sinclair pulled $1.3 million or credits from there's no way this doesn't end in some sort of a catastrophe.
And they'll worry more about the credits being used for the
rooms,
housing.
Yeah. Because again, it's the principle. You know, they flex to this thing, but I thought it was, to me, it was just such a great look at how government works, because that's exactly what it does. And Ivanova even had that line, "Oh, it's pretty funny, pulling money from this place to pay this place." That's how government works, at least here in the United States. We have entire federal and state agencies that bill other federal and state agencies for doing their core function. They have the same budget. It comes out of literally the same wallet. It goes, They just changed what pocket it's sitting in there. It's ridiculous. I thought it was a neat commentary on our state as a government, and also just the principle that they do stuff like that.
I thought it was an interesting thing to put in the episode, an interesting plot line. On some level, it was kind of somebody named this in an episode a long time ago. It was the tragic relief, the comedic relief. Like, because it really was the ha-ha throughout the course of the episode. And it was about the only real ha-ha that we got. Because there was the lovey thing with Sheridan and Delenn. There was the heavy stuff with Bester and the Underground Railroad and all that sort of stuff, which we'll get into that in just a second. This was the funny part. But like, were they running short on time for this episode and they had to fill it in with something? Like, I don't understand why they brought this in at this moment.
I think it accomplished three things. I think that it reintroduced us to the budget. This is the first time Sheridan's had to sit and look at the budget stuff. We got a couple of those with Sinclair. So this kind of like, hey, there's a budget. This is an operation that he has to run. It got him and Ivanova in a room together where they weren't working. Right. Like, let's create a situation, and the jokes, they were funny, whatever. But what it showed, like, it's developing that personal relationship between Sheridan and Ivanova that I think is really important. But the big thing that it did, I think this is a huge thing actually, is it told us that there are a ton of Earth military transports that are going through Babylon 5. Where are they going? Where are they coming from? Why is Earth moving the military around? I think that, like, the other stuff was great. Little reminders, build a little bit. But this was a seed that was dropped that Earth is prepping some military operation, and they're doing it through Babylon 5.
My initial response to that, Jeff, might be reading too much into it. I could be wrong. People out there are like, oh, Brent, you're so wrong. This is absolutely a hint they're dropping. And that's fine. I'm glad to be wrong on that. My suspicion is that's really more of a throwaway line. Like, it's just this is just what happens, and they're not going to go anywhere with it.
People love it when we say they're throwaway lines. That really gives people, right. Yeah, they love it.
Yeah, right. Because it always means we're just wrong.
Right.
The fact that Sheridan and Ivanova got locked out of their quarters was hilarious to me. So funny.
And that Garibaldi did it. Like, that was the whole point of the scene. Like, when he went into, we learned that bar, at least I learned, it's called Earhart's. I didn't know that before. Yeah,
hello, Amelia Earhart. They had the propeller on there and all that.
It all makes sense now.
I really wonder if they know that she's just living out in the Delta Quadrant.
Exactly. They could get her at any point. It's so close to where they are, just a jump gate away, really. But I thought it was great. He's like, hey, Ivanova, are you running this whole Underground Railroad thing? I've got questions. No, it's not me at all. Okay, cool. Hey, I got something I got to tell you. And he literally took her aside. He's like, I just got these orders. My men are doing it right now. Sorry.
You know what I loved was how many months ago was it? It was a while, because this movie's been in the theaters for a while now. The new Top Gun movie's been out for a while now.
Oh, a long time. Yeah.
Maverick, right? It's been, what's it been? 6, 7, 8 months now, I guess.
Easy. Because it was like early. It was like, it was like June that came out, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was like way back at the beginning of the summer. So, yeah, like what, 9 months ago now. In that movie, spoiler alert, they had a scene where somebody said something they weren't supposed to in a bar, and they had to buy a round of drinks for everybody.
That's a real thing. If you go into a bar, a military bar, and you go there to work, talk official business, you got that's a real thing. We used to tell people,
that, like, for real?
Yep.
I've never heard that before in my life. I don't spend a lot of time in military bars, so whatever. But
yeah, we used to have a rule when I was in the Navy, because so I was on a submarine and we wore poop suits. It's a jumpsuit thing, and they were blue. And we used to people would come up and you're just like, am I wearing blue right now? Because I'm not. So why are you talking to me about work? Like, lay off. I thought that was cool. They did that. That was a neat just piece of realism that they had.
I wonder how much a round of drinks cost for a bar as busy as Earhart's was at that point.
There were a lot of people in there. And that bartender was really excited to get that going.
He was not letting him get away.
But I wonder, as we were talking about that, when at the end, Ivanova's laying down, and then Talia comes in and interrupts her, but she's wearing, that was a pretty swanky nightie.
That was, wow.
Yeah. Part of me wonders, did Garibaldi buy that for her as an apology? Like, he's like, hey, sorry for locking you out of your room. Here's a nightie for you. I know you have trouble sleeping. Yeah, level of luxury we've been told doesn't happen on Babylon 5.
She had a silk nightie on.
Yeah. Which
she was just gorgeous in it. And I mean that in all the respectful ways. I really don't mean that disrespectfully to her at all. Like, wow.
Should we dive into the railroad stuff?
Yes, but I want to make fun of it just a little bit.
All right.
Not of the railroad stuff, of something specifically that happened with Bester, or a couple things that happened with Bester. First of all, you mentioned yelling. I also yelled. And I'm surprised that this isn't the spot that you yelled. Please get ready for your censor button there, Jeff.
Oh, okay.
Because when Bester came on screen within the first 3 minutes of the episode or whatever, I literally went, holy, it's Bester. I was like, oh my God. And I mean, part of it was the fact that I just said this could not be a Bester episode. I didn't even see it coming. They're talking about budgets in their bedrooms. What the heck is this guy doing in this episode? Like, it floored me. I texted you in that moment, and I went, Jeff, I just watched the opening of this episode, and I said all I can say, and I sent you a GIF of like Lucille Ball going like big eyes, going like, ah. I want to know when you got that, because I tried to be as cryptic as I possibly could. What ran through your mind? Because you hadn't watched it yet.
The thing I thought is, oh my God, it's a Dr. Franklin episode and he's doing some sort of weird illegal ethical thing again. Right. Like, oh look, surprise, Brent got the episode right again.
Yeah. And then the other one, and this might've been Sheridan, and this might've actually been when he's talking about the room thing, but he says the word fraggin'.
Yes, abso-fraggin-lutely.
He is one hard K sound away from getting to the word frackin'.
Mm-hmm.
And I really need to hear this word by the time the show is over. Because I know that this show is pre-Battlestar Galactica. But for all the ways that they try to get around cussing in this show, I need to hear frackin'.
It's going to happen at some point. It has to. Has to.
Oh, here's the other one. I feel like I've noticed this before, but this one for some reason really, really stood out to me. The part of the episode where Bester is on the comm talking to Talia, and she's not even looking at him. She's looking away, which I get. There's a staging thing to that.
Well, she's still watching the Ironheart replay. Like,
right,
that's
right.
Yeah, that's on a different screen for her.
I don't think they have that side of the wall for the set built, so they have to shoot her facing out. But I felt like I could see and hear them shooting Walter Koenig's part of that exchange, and I could almost hear somebody off screen reading the part of Talia, and him just sitting there waiting, and the director cueing him to say his next line. Like it didn't feel natural
at all. It was clearly pre-recorded. What it felt like, I mean, everything, his tone and everything was, I really expected him, he's talking, and I would like to take you to breakfast so that we can talk about this. And then I expected him to look at her with a little smile and say, Reliant out. Hit the button and then, have it all go. It was just that whole look, I'm being controlled and saying a thing. I think a lot of the Babcomming that happens in Babylon 5 has that feel. Like that's a thing. And I'll take the buzz. Star Trek does a really, really good job in having dialogue between the view screen and the actor. Yes. They have all the way back to the original series. It's always worked really well. It's come across natural. There's only been a handful of them in Babylon 5 that have seemed natural. They are clearly taped very separately.
Yeah.
That one just really showed, because it was totally Star Trek 2 Chekhov. Totally.
Okay, I think that's all the fun things I have. Hey, I'm sorry, just so I know on account, I have one reference left. Is that right?
We both have one left.
We both have one left. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is going to be tight. But I think, one to kind of pivot from sort of a fun thing, but get in there. Bester was really trying to get the term normals across.
Yeah.
Well, it's to protect the privacy of the normals. I can't do this around the normals. Call them normies. Call them something, but you just call them normals. It just sounds like you're forcing it.
Well, okay. This for me is a little bit like part 2 of a bigger conversation that I think we have to have. Which, Jeff, maybe we just sort of move into that because we all know what happened.
Right.
We don't have to recap what happened. So the idea that they bring up with an underground railroad immediately brings imagery of slavery, because that is our history as a country here in America.
That's where the term comes from.
It's exactly where the term comes from. You bring up Underground Railroad, we now start thinking of slavery. And I'm sitting here thinking, is there an insinuation here that telepaths are actually slaves? And does this have anything to do with why Talia is very wishy-washy on the core? And I was not alive back when slavery was still a thing here. I've seen movies, which I know were made not back then either, right? But there are times where you have portrayed a character who is a slave that kind of is on the side of his owners and the slave masters, right? And like the slave is trying to get other slaves to comply and be like, look, these guys, look, we've got good clothes on. There's a character in the film Roots, in the movie Roots, the new one that, by the way, if you know one's watched the new one that was made a couple of years ago,
I haven't seen that one.
Great.
Really?
It does everything that a reboot should do.
Oh, wow.
And this particular character is played by Forrest Whitaker. Okay. But he is a guy who he's trying to keep everybody else in line. And while he clearly understands that he is a slave and doesn't like that aspect, there is still this loyalty and this attachment to his slave owners, almost a brainwashing effect. And that's where Talia really seems to be, is because she's still very Psi Corps. Like she can't get out of it. Like it's ingrained in her, right? And they almost have to show her how slave-like she is. But as a part of that idea, like if we extend that metaphor, was JMS writing, did he set this up to be that kind of a, hey, let's present this concept and this idea? I don't know. It's certainly what I pulled out of it just because of his own words. But the idea that everyone who is a telepath is not normal, because everyone else is normal. You can call them normies if you want, but I think it's very specific. You don't call them normies because they're normal.
They're just normal.
The people who aren't normal, those are the ones who get the names. Those are the ones who get put in boxes. Those are the ones who get put into concentration camps, not concentration.
Relocation.
Internment camp.
Or relocation. They call them relocation. And then they went to, I think they went as far as to say, which aren't too far from concentration camps.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like that idea that they're breeding in, like just by use of the words, normals. They're the normals. Gosh, Jeff, I need more Star Trek references.
You got one, man.
But I gotta save it for later.
I have one also, but
no, you gotta save yours.
Looking to see, I think I need it. Well, for your Delta discussion, it doesn't count, so you can use it in your Delta discussion.
That is true. That is but I need like 5 more right now, because there's so many great examples of this through Star Trek. That's not a reference.
Well, I think I can help you out a little bit.
Go ahead.
I think I can help you out because I went through the exact same thought exercise of has Underground Railroad, the term, just become such a kind of ubiquitous, is it the Kleenex, of a thing where anything that's just moving people around quietly is Underground Railroad, or does it always carry those connotations of slavery with it? And where I went was in the game Fallout 4, one of the factions is the Railroad, and it's essentially an underground railroad. There are a group of synths that have been made to completely replicate what a human looks like, and there's a lot of stuff around. But their whole thing is finding the synths, liberating them, relocating them, and letting them live their lives as just a human being. Go out and live their life. Totally pulls onto the connotations of slavery. I think the term Underground Railroad comes with slavery, period. I think it's part and parcel. And I think what they're talking about here is they've created this weird paradigm where as a telepath, you are elevated. You're better than the normals, but also you're ranked and you're tagged. You're a P1, you're a P5, you're a P11. Once you're a P12, now you're going to be a Psi Cop. Like they have this hierarchy within that really sets you up in a way that you're better than these other people. You're still just cattle, though. We're going to match you. We're going to breed you. We're going to control every aspect of your life and have a code of conduct that tells you have to run this way. For Talia, and I'm kind of might be jumping on your point here so you can get back on, but for Talia, there's I think 2 things happening for her. One is conditioning, what I call boot camp conditioning. I'm going to do the right thing, not because it's the right thing, but because I've been trained for so long that I will be punished if I don't do the right thing. And punishment in Psi Corps can be a relocation camp. It can be the sleepers. It can be death. It can be things we probably haven't even been exposed to yet. So she knows you don't stand up to mother. Core is mother, core is father. You don't stand up to core, right? Because you're conditioned. But secondly, you talked about it last week.
Well, I'm sorry. Let me back up.
Yeah, jump in.
Like on that conditioning, imagine as a person of color. I'm sorry, as a telepath.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. You are told, and you are made to live, that your very existence is a threat. Sound familiar? A
little bit. A lot.
You can either submit to the core and then you can do what they tell you, or you can get drugged up and lose yourself, or you can run and hide because we're going to try to kill you if you don't. Does this sound familiar? You can comply, or you're going to die. Jeff, when we start talking about things that speak to today, this is a 30-year-old show. Things that speak to today. Oh my gosh. And how, and you I mean, yeah. Hey, we're going to put you with you and let you guys breed. And if you're not going to do it, guess what? We're going to put you to sleep and we're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
We're going to, now I don't know if there's an insinuation that it was a rape situation, or if it was like artificial insemination, whatever, like either way, you're violating this person.
Yeah.
Like bad, in a not good way. That is what you're just talking about. Right
exactly.
There.
Yeah. This is going to happen. So I will toe the line when it comes to the core. And it's not even a conscious thought. At some point that conditioning just becomes, it's a survival instinct. The trauma rewires your brain in a way that you're not even aware you're standing up for them. And I think
is this a similar situation to even like an abuser victim type relationship?
100%.
You stay in it because you can't get away from it. And you try to, but your brain doesn't let you.
But also you don't think you need to get away from it, because I mean, really, I deserve this. I did the things. And so, I mean, this is what's supposed to happen. I did the thing. And so this happens.
Yeah, or I am this. And so that's just how I'm.
So it's just what it is. I think that the scenes where the rogue telepaths shared their experiences and their stories and the filming of them was that whole sequence was so good. And then the placement of it, you had kind of the lead lurker guy in the background quite a bit doing that, thing where like someone's sharing their story and he's, he's carrying that affinitive empathy with them and just being like, oh yeah, holding his face and, slicking his hair back like, oh my gosh, I feel you, and then came over even and like, the one who found herself pregnant, he even put his arms around her afterwards, comforted her after sharing the trauma. But what that was oftentimes in those situations where you're so conditioned, all these things are wrong. Those things are sitting in your brain and you need something that awakens them. And that's what that series of stories were. She didn't hear anything she didn't know. There were no revelations for her, but it validated and gave context to what was already in her brain, where it finally connected the dots in a way that she's like, I can't anymore. I wish this episode aired before Soulmates, because everything that happened with her in there would have made more sense. Her wanting to leave Psi Corps, like that would have been a very natural. I think it still works. I feel like Stoner introduced some of these things and then this built on the things that so she could go, but I feel like it would have been really smooth if they were swapped.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that. I don't know that I thought about having them swapped, but there was a piece, like I'm sitting here going, as she's listening to these people talk, in the back of my head, and therefore in the back of Talia's head, she also has one of these stories.
Yep.
Because she was matched to this dude and they were supposed to breed. Like they put them together so that they could build a superior, like, oh yeah, I've heard that story before.
Right. And she knows Ivanova's mom died because of the sleepers, because of the drugs. So that, the person sharing the story of his brother, who just one day he didn't wake up. Right. All these are all awakenings that you and I have in our memory from the show. So she has as well. But I think the other piece for this hits right back to what you talked about last week and what I put the label on of be, do, have. Not only is she conditioned to not stand up to Psi Corps, but without Psi Corps, what am I? I'm nothing without Psi Corps. She was in there when she was 5. She has no identity. So it is horrifying and terrifying and unimaginable to not be Psi Corps.
Right. She's got to get her mind out of that. Garibaldi has this line, and I wrote it down as best I could. I'm not going to swear it's verbatim, but this is pretty good. He says this: the law is the law. It's damn ironic, isn't it? The Corps got started because we were afraid of telepaths. Now they're the victims of our own fears. Then we took them and shoved them into a big black box called Psi Corps. Now look at them, wearing this, wearing that, giving orders. And Sheridan says, if you ask me, we created our own monster and maybe we deserve it.
Yeah. Garibaldi, I think in his statement, he talked about black gloves and jack boots and black uniforms. I feel like that was getting as close to a Nazi comparison as you could without saying Nazi. And that's, you want to talk about eugenics. You want to talk about perfect breeding. You want to talk about better than the normals.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there you go.
There you go. And they're now taking over.
I don't think they are. I think they have, because
fair enough. Absolutely fair.
Yeah. Because here's the thing for me. And I think this is one of the biggest takeaways of the whole episode. If that relatively small group of rogue telepaths can get together and hold hands, and they can make Bester believe that he just killed all these people and everything's cool, what could a group of 100 or 1,000 or more do? Could they impact a city, a planet, an entire government system? Are people seeing and experiencing a reality that's not even happening? And that's what they're reacting to right now.
Is the president even dead?
Oh, wow. He was really curious, right? What are people saying? They all but said, hey, we were tied to the assassination on there, but maybe it wasn't an assassination at all. Oh.
I mean, but there's that idea. You put them into a box, internment camp. And you do that to keep them separated because they'll become a problem. And if they do link up together, they'll rise up and that could go really, really bad. Jeff, if I could kind of even force us into the next segment, because we're right here on it
really quick, just because, I mean, and this is kind of a weird jump, and maybe I should have hit it earlier, but there are two really cool actor highlights that I wanted to pull out in here real fast. One, the lurker guy, Giannin Loeffler, doesn't have a lot of credits. I got the impression listening to him that he was either hearing impaired or deaf.
Right.
Is not.
He?
No.
Okay.
He's Swiss.
Okay.
It's just, he's known for having a unique voice and delivery. And I don't know. I thought that was very fascinating. Here's the big one though, that I thought was, super fascinating. When Bester and the other Psi Cop are questioning the guy near the beginning, and he pulls that other Psi Cop is played by Judy Leavitt. That's Walter Koenig's wife.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And she had bit parts in most of the original series Star Trek movies also. So kind of a cool, hey, we're together. Yeah. I thought that was
neat.
That's
fun.
But to wrap in and to move in, I just want to touch on what we know about Talia.
Okay.
Now, right? Because
let's recap it.
Yeah, she's the future, right? And so we don't know what that means, but what we know, her telekinesis has gone to a whole new level.
Right.
She's got shields that can shield people, herself, from scans, whether it's just Bester or other people, not totally sure. Mm-hmm. And then she clearly, her Psi level, her P level has raised because Lurker Dude was saying, you tipped the scales. You have something special here.
Yeah.
So Talia is at a whole new level at this point.
Yeah, Talia is something we haven't seen yet. I mean, a step below whatever Ironheart was, or maybe just something different altogether.
Mm-hmm.
Talia is something, and she doesn't even really know what it is yet, because she apparently had those shields up and didn't even know it.
Didn't even know. She made that comment. You've been in my mind twice. How did you not see this?
Exactly. Yeah. And Psi Corps is literally searching for its people to continue. That's probably something we don't need to lose track of, Jeff. Psi Corps is breeding people to get a better Psi Corps rating, and they're not willing to let anyone slip through the cracks, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's got to come here. It's for national security, but that's not it.
They're breeding the superhuman is what they're breeding.
And that's what they're trying to go towards, right?
That's Hatterack.
I mean, they've told us what Psi Corps is up to, and that's what it is. Right.
Yep. Trying to find the most powerful being possible in humanity.
So, and by the way, with Talia, I just want her taking the symbolism of her taking off the Psi Corps badge at the end of the episode is huge. Yeah. Being able to set it down. Now we're going to see her with that Psi Corps badge right back on her shirt tomorrow or next episode, whatever. But the idea that she could do that
did you see how she paused? Right? Like, first, huge kudos to Ivanova, where she's like, got a problem with that. Like, you're cool. That's not cool. And then she was just like, oh, pause. And then she like, that 2 seconds was like, probably those 2 seconds took 4 hours in Talia's mind.
Mm-hmm. Here's another question. Speaking of a pause, Bester's leaving. She's thinking in her head, does he know? Does he know? Does he know? And he stops and turns around and looks at her. And then he turns around and walks away. They don't answer that question for us. Does he know?
I don't think he does. I think that was, this is what I think it was, actually. And I don't know what the sequence is, but dude is legit with a PPG thing, right? I mean, those assassins, boom, boom. He took him out with the 10, the telepaths or whatever, boom, 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 boom. Like, he was nailing it. He's going to know, and maybe he just did that math. He doesn't have 10 charges taken out of his PPG. Like, he's going to know he didn't fire 10 times. We've seen that before. PPG, oh, it's kind of hot. Just fired. Oh, charge, yeah, full. It's still got this in there. We know those are trackable things. Bester's handy with it. I think that's what he paused about. Or maybe he's like, hey, did I just bump into a thing? Maybe not.
Yeah. Does she have something that I almost just caught? I'm not really. That's what I thought it was. I don't know that he knows as much as like he just sort of caught a whiff of something and was like, is that? Nah. And he went on with it. The PPG thing though, that could come up one way or the other. Like he could just realize it. Like, wait a minute, when I got home, it was still full. Yeah.
How's this thing full? I murdered 13 people in cold blood, or however many there. Well, that's not true. He did it in self-defense. I'll give credit.
So where this comes down to me, and I mentioned earlier, the A plot and B plot really dovetailing in with each other. We have this whole idea of the telepaths. They're being separated out. We're going to put them into a box. That box is Psi Corps. We're going to brainwash them. We're going to make them wear gloves. That was huge. They took off their gloves and linked hands, right? We're going to make them wear gloves. We're going to keep everybody separated. We're going to put this wall up between them and all the normals. We're going to call them normals and everybody else over here is weird. And they come to the end and they realize that if they take the gloves off and join hands, they can accomplish something that they could never accomplish individually. Holy cow. Juxtapose the fight that they had to get through to figure that out, right? And honestly, the ongoing fight that telepaths are going to have to continue to live with from here on out, because this is just this little tiny group of people, right? Juxtapose that to what's going on with Delenn and Sheridan. Here you have two people who are fighting against each other in a war. And specifically with Sheridan, he was, Sinclair rewritten on the front line, right? And he's out on this date with a Minbari. And I don't know that he knows in the moment that it's a date, but that's clearly what it was. And one of those two enemies, you have two enemies out together having a meal. One of those enemies is there specifically trying to be a bridge. She says, if I'm to be a bridge between our peoples, I have to know here and know what's going on. The answer is go out and talk. Let's go talk. Not about work. Let's just go be together.
Let's connect.
And talk. Connect. It certainly looks like it's going down the romantic side. It might not. It really could just be a very professional Garibaldi Ivanova kind of a relationship ultimately. It kind of doesn't have that feel to me though. And she ends it with this line: it appears we have much more in common than we could have ever imagined. I even like where she says, no race can truly be intelligent without laughter.
Yeah.
And she spent a full year in Temple learning to laugh, which as a comedian, I love that. But the answer is to go talk. Whereas what we see with the Psi Corps people is they're building a wall and they're separating people away. By the telepaths taking off those gloves, which is symbolic, and linking hands, also symbolic, and joining forces, which was not even really symbolic. That was just really direct. You join your forces together. Again, they could do something that they never could have done on their own. And I find those two ideas, one very willing and just laying it out there, and the other is kind of being forced into it when they're not even supposed to do that. Like, those are two really cool side-by-side storylines that seemingly have absolutely nothing to do with each other, and huge on the Star Trek message in both of those ways.
Yeah. I kind of felt like you were just going to do your Delta rating right there. You were diving right into it.
I just talked about how Star Trekky this episode really is. I talked about the deep moral message that's in it. I talked about holding up a mirror to society because this is still relevant today. And does it give us hope that we can be better in the future? I think if nothing else, the date between Delenn and Sheridan definitely gives us that hope. If you just go talk, let's go together. It doesn't have to be a date, but just go talk and find out about your fellow person, right? You'll find out that you have a lot more in common than you never did before. Jeff, this is a 5 Delta Star Trek episode through and through. It would not surprise me if DC Fontana herself wrote this episode, or David Gerald. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
On my second watch through, I specifically watched for that because I'm like, there's no way. Like this, they pulled in big guns for this. But no, JMS wrote this, and this should be a jewel in his crown.
Yeah.
Because so well done. I think the other piece, the other Star Trekky thing in this that wasn't done as well as what you talked about, but I think Franklin introduced a really good Star Trek message, and that is that just because a law is a law doesn't mean you blindly follow that law. Now, are there other routes that could have been taken and all that great stuff? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. But when a law, I'll steal your words, is morally reprehensible, mm-hmm. you stand up against that law, right? You fight, you do something about that. And Franklin his thing happened to be underground and putting himself in the station at huge risk. I loved how Sheridan handled it. Mm-hmm. We're done, right? This thing's done. Cool. You do it again, I will lock you up and lead you to the gallows myself. Also, he had said something too when he says, I don't disagree with you. You were, did I do the wrong thing? No, I'm not saying that. In fact, I'm not saying what I'm saying. I'm not thinking what I'm thinking. Because there's no way to put that into words, it's necessarily that makes sense. But when something ain't right, you call it as ain't right. Right. And that's the message that I think shone through for me.
There you go.
We've talked this whole episode about how awesome it is and how much fun it is and how well put together it was. I don't need to give a whole diatribe and say it again. This is a 5-star Fury episode. I enjoyed this. Episode. It was perfectly crafted. The acting was incredible. Everything about this episode is fantastic. I hope you don't give anything away, but you can tell us on Twitter or in the comments below. Is this one of the Babylon 5 episodes that are out there? Like Babylon Squared. That's one that people said this is one of the Babylon. Is this one of those? Because it sure as heck should be. This is so well done.
Yeah, it absolutely. And I 100% agree with you on your Star Furies. This was a great episode. I'd watch this anytime. Jeff, here in season 2, we're doing something we didn't do in season 1. We are ranking these episodes. And by the time we're done with this, we're going to have the absolute 100% completely accurate, definitive ranking of Babylon 5 season 2. Jeff, our current ranking sits at least the top 5. We have Soulmates at number 1, Points of Departure at number 2, A Spider in the Web, Geometry of Shadows, Revelations is rounding out the top 5. Where do you place A Race Through the Dark Places?
I really got to think about this one for a while. I mean, it's pretty tough. And this is the number 1. This is the number 1 episode of season 2 so far.
Yeah, that's going to push Revelations out of the top 5, which is okay.
Yeah, I think there's still a couple within the top 5. I'm okay not being in the top 5 when we get to the end of this. Well, Brent, that's it for A Race Through Dark Places. Next week, we're going to be watching The Coming of Shadows for the very first time. Yeah. So we don't watch this ahead of time. We don't look at anything. Brent just uses his telepathic powers to figure out what's up. But one of the games we like to play is guess what the next episode is going to be based on the title alone. So you've just heard it, Brent. What do you think that the namesake for season 2 is going to be about?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, didn't you tell me that they kind of titled the whole of season 2, The Coming of Shadows?
Yeah. And here we
are.
And
this is that episode. So you did say to me that the episode for the next week is a little bonk on the head. Like it sort of gives the whole thing away. So I'm going to go with whatever the shadow is, whatever that organization is, or whatever they are. This is where they're going to bust on the scene and everybody knows who they are, right? Yeah. Like they're full force. Here's the Dominion. This is them right there. And they're now something you got to reckon with. That's the episode.
That's what it's going to be. But I want to be that guy. I want to be that guy who's like, no. So my theory is that there are big S shadows, like the ones in the ships and out there at Zahadum and all that. And then there's little S shadows, the little things that go on all around. We just spent, 2 episodes looking at the shadows that are looming over Earth and Mars and humanity. We've looked at the shadows that are looming over the Centauri, right? With the Emperor not having an heir and all that kind of stuff. So I think this next one, it's going to be a Londo and Jakar episode. And I'm saying that in a very self-serving way. I love this episode, but I felt their absence. So I think this is going to be the one, because like the little thing we've heard dropped a couple of times is Jakar is all in on this Book of Jaquan and the shadows and all this stuff. His government is not. They've basically told him to shut up and stuff it. So I think there's going to be a rift between Jakar and his government, and this is going to start showing the shadows that loom over the Narn, the Narn regime to bring them in. So everybody, like everybody else, they've got problems going on. We'll see. We're going to find out right here next week on Babylon 5 for the first time. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you haven't already, please, wherever you're listening to us, or if you're watching us on YouTube and you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe. And please, leave us a rating, leave us a review. I love reading those here on the podcast itself. So Brent, until next time.
Mary had a little lamb, little lamb.
Until next.
Mary had a
Till next time.
Lamb. Fleece was white as snow.
Peace and peace and long life, everybody.
It's Walker's time.